Good evening. I am Robert J. Conte III, Chief of Police of the Metropolitan Police Department here in Washington, D.C. Today, I'm joined by Deputy Mayor of Public Safety and Justice, Lindsay Appiah, and some of my MPD colleagues to provide an update on MPD's investigation into the shooting incident that occurred early Saturday morning in the 1000 block of Quincy Street Northeast, which resulted in the tragic death of a son of our city, 13-year-old Karon Blake, but to also outline the process that we must undertake to present the most complete case to the United States Attorney's Office for their independent review and correct the misinformation that is swirling in the community and on social media. First and foremost, any loss of life, especially that of a child in the District of Columbia, is tragic, and I want to offer my condolences to the family and friends of Karon. Right now, MPD's investigation continues to be active and ongoing. This process takes time, and our detectives have been communicating with the United States Attorney's Office since we were called to the scene. With this case, and in all cases that we investigate, there is a process that must occur, and our detectives are tasked with gathering all of the facts and evidence to determine the totality of what occurred. We recognize that the community's desire in getting the details of this incident, but we must also acknowledge that the ongoing nature of the investigation prevents us from sharing specifics that could jeopardize the integrity of this case. I'm asking our DC family to uphold our DC values and to be respectful to one another and patient as we go through this judicial process. There has been too much misinformation swirling around this incident. Too many people have made assumptions about this case, and it is unfair to the grieving family. Spreading of inaccurate information is dangerous, reckless, and has the potential to adversely impact the investigation and the relationships in our community. We know of social media images that have surfaced that are showing people that have no connection to this case. People are making assumptions and searching for people that are not involved. People are making allegations centered around race, and that is wrong. Our detectives are gathering all of the facts and evidence so it can be presented to the United States Attorney's Office and ultimately to a grand jury of District of Columbia residents to make a judicial determination if there was criminal intent and if a crime occurred. And a grand jury will determine if a crime occurred based on facts and not mere speculation. We shouldn't allow this matter to divide our community. We have people demonizing both sides, and we don't even know all of the facts. I want to thank members of the community who have stepped up to share factual information and evidence with our detectives. Just within the last few hours, community members reaching out, sharing factual information. If you have information or evidence in the form of video that can help this case, I'm asking community members, please call 202-727-9099 or feel free to text us anonymously at 50411. That will end the official statement, and I can take a few questions if you have them.
Chief.
Mark.
First, tell us if you found a weapon on or near Karon Blake. Did you recover any weapon other than the weapon that the resident used?
So no weapons have been recovered thus far, Mark.
And then what can you tell us about the shooter? Will you identify him by name? Can you tell us his race, his age, his background? Was he law enforcement? Anything that you can tell us about him in particular?
So Mark, I will give you some information, but you know, this person that's involved in this matter, we have to ensure that, again, this thing is getting really reckless and dangerous with some of the behavior that I'm seeing. We normally do not identify people in similarly situated in a situation unless we have a warrant in hand for that person, or unless there's a person who we are trying to identify, then we don't know who that person is. That is not what we're dealing with here. I can tell you that the person is an African-American person. I can tell you that much. I can tell you that it is an adult, and I can tell you that it is a male. Those are the three things that I can tell you about this particular person. It is obviously very unfortunate that we have had a loss of life in this case, but we got to make sure as a community that we get this right. And people are rushing to judgment. People are canvassing communities looking for a suspect. That's not right.
Can you tell us if he is currently or former law enforcement? Or...
He is not law enforcement.
The initial police report had a charge of murder too. If that was in the initial police report, why wasn't this man arrested on the scene?
Thank you for that. Because this person died as a result of being shot, and we don't know. He otherwise should be alive. So in this case, the ruling from the medical examiner, when the case is ruled, there's a process that takes place. Now, on the scene of this investigation, if our police officers felt like there was probable cause in consultation with the U.S. Attorney's Office, that this is a case that will be able to move forward through the justice system at that time, then an arrest can be made. There are a lot of cases that happen in our city where arrests are not immediately made because all of the facts are not known. So for anyone to speculate or to make an assumption that, oh, an arrest should, so make an arrest immediately and then the judge throws it out the next day, that's justice for the family, that's doing this case justice. No. We're going to get this right. We're going to do it the right way, and we're not going to be influenced by because of some people who think that, you know, this should have happened or that should have happened. If people are out there who are saying that and they happen to see what happened, hey, we got space in the grand jury for them too to come and tell their side of the story. That's not what I'm hearing.
And what you were saying was that the man did tell you he shot Karon Blake. Can you?
Sure, I can talk about that piece of it. The person called the police after the shooting. When our officers arrived on the scene, that person was performing CPR. He gave a brief account of what happened, and now that person is represented by counsel as a result of this investigation.
Can you explain some of the
people in the city just broadly who want to be assured that there'll be accountability for this?
I've been talking about accountability since I've been in this space, and I think the best way to ensure accountability is to ensure that our residents continue to follow cases, not just this case, right? See, we got a lot of people out here while we're talking about, there are a lot of cases that happen in our city. We want to ensure accountability, make sure, especially when we have a loss of life in this city. I'm impacted by that. Community members are impacted by that. Family members are impacted by that. I want to see the same passion when we have other homicides that happen in our city. We've already lost a young man so far this year. First case of this year. And I want to see that same passion directed at the people who are responsible anytime a life is taken in our city. In this particular case, we want to make sure that we go through the process so that we get it right. It's not about getting it fast. It's about getting it done right, making sure that if there's a person to be arrested, that we do it the right way.
Chief, can I follow up on that?
Sure.
You talk about passion here. This is as fired up as I think I've ever heard you talking about a case. What is it about this case that has you so fired up about it?
The fact that there's misinformation swirling out there and people are tying it to race and other things and putting images of innocent people out there next to young Karon, saying that this is the person that's responsible for that. That's reckless and that's dangerous. Imagine if it was your picture beside his and people showed up at your house with half information. That's unacceptable. Let the police do the police job. We'll do what it is we need to do to investigate. Detectives have been working on this case. In addition to the detectives working on this, we're working very closely with the United States Attorney's Office. The grand jury has a part in this. All of that information will be presented to a grand jury. It's not MPD making that decision. Presented to a grand jury of D.C. residents who will be able to examine the facts as we know them and then make a determination about what needs to happen as we move forward. Not somebody posting an image of a citizen online saying, hey, yeah, I think this is the guy. Like, come on, give me a break. Yes, ma'am.
Talk about who called 911 and when. Did the person who fired the shot only call 911 after or when he saw supposed break-ins?
I believe the call came after, and I believe the call was made by the person who fired the shot.
Can you talk about expectations for other community members who might see similar activity in their neighborhoods?
Sure. If we see people who see activities in their neighborhoods, we want you to call the police. We want you to call the police. There are dangerous situations that we encounter. Our police officers encounter those situations all the time. Certainly we want our police officers to be able to do their jobs and to respond to those situations the way that they need to be responded to and mitigate whatever the issue is, or arrest a person if necessary. Yes, right here and then here. Yeah.
You know, we know that it is illegal in the District of Columbia to use lethal force against property, to protect property. Can you speak to, number one, is there any information on what happened after the illegal gun owner confronted the 13-year-old in between that part and when shots were fired? And what, if anything, could allow this shooting to be justifiable in the District of Columbia?
So that's part of the investigation. And as we go through the investigation, that's the piece that we have to get to the bottom of in terms of what happened. Now, the person has to be in fear of their life or the life of another. And those are the facts that we have to sift through to figure out, hey, did that happen? And based upon the information that we have, present that information to a grand jury to see if that is reasonable. That's not a Chief Conte call. That's not a U.S. Attorney's Office call. That's a call that will be or something that will be charged to the grand jury in the District of Columbia to make that determination.
So has there been anything found that shows this to support the argument?
So we have pulled, as recent as within the last hour or so, we got a call from a citizen about some video. I'm going out, we're pulling video from a lot of people, and right now we're combing through. I don't know for sure if we have everything that we need just yet. Back here in the back.
Yes, I spoke to a bunch of community leaders this morning who were concerned about the fact that there has been a lot of crime that's been happening amongst teenagers. This incident was a 13-year-old child who was outside at 4 a.m. What do you say to parents, community members who are concerned about our youth being outside at odd hours of the night committing crimes?
Well, obviously, we don't want to see our youth engaged in crimes. We've been talking about this discussion about youth. It's not a discussion that started yesterday. We want to make sure that our youth are getting the things that they need in terms of support in community. We've talked about accountability. We've talked about parents. We've talked about all that stuff. But today I'm talking about Karon Blake and his case and what happened in his case. And what he did a year ago, 2 years ago, that night, none of that stuff matters to me. What matters to me is that that young man is now deceased, and we have a responsibility to get to the bottom of that, and that's what I'm focused on. Yes, sir,
hey,
here,
Chief,
and then we'll come over here. Yes, sir.
Chief, real quick, there's been a lot of talk, including from the new Ward 5 council member, talking about that they want the name to be released. Do you think there's any need for laws to be changed to allow for quicker release of names, and not just shootings like this, but also just other incidents that attract a lot of public interest?
I think that in this case, or in any other case, I think that what we do is what we've always done in terms of if there's a warrant for his arrest, at some point, we release the name at that point. We do for police officers. We release police officers' name very soon after, and there's a law for that. I mean, obviously, you can take that up with the lawmakers, but the problem is that when names are released early on, that could adversely impact this case. And I don't think anybody standing in front of me or watching this wants to do anything that could adversely impact this case, unfairly influence community members because everybody wants to know the name. What's the name? We know what happened. We know some of what happened. We know that we have a 13-year-old that's dead. How about let's focus on this young man's family and making sure that they have the support and the services that they need from community members. And government and police department. Let's make sure that we're doing that thing. This is traumatic, not just for this kid, but siblings, for parents, for all of that stuff. And I want to make sure that we stay focused in on this young man and not get caught up in all of the other stuff. You know, we release the name to, give the name out right now. What does that change? It doesn't bring this young man back. Yes, sir.
Two questions about the shooter. One, you said he has a lawyer now. Is he cooperating with your investigators? And two, what can you tell us about his registration for the gun and whether or not he had a concealed carry permit?
Great questions. So now that he's represented by counsel, we had some initial discussions with him. All communications with him have to go through his counsel. We have not run into any obstacles there. With respect to his status, he's a licensed. He has a license to carry a concealed weapon, as well as he has a firearm registered with his home. In the District of Columbia, we have over, and some people may not, realize this, but we have over 12,000 people that are licensed concealed carry permit holders in the District of Columbia. Since 2008, we have over 34,000 people who have registered firearms in their homes. So, it's not uncommon for us to have someone who has a registered firearm or registered firearm or registered concealed carry permit. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
You personally, I believe, approved the concealed carry permits applications.
So the police department, we approve it. I approve it. My name is on the permit. Yes.
So my question is, you know, we heard from the mayor. We basically heard from you. In a situation like this, call 911. Don't go outside and settle a property issue with a gun, armed like that. I know this is under investigation for criminal charges, but can you do anything? Are you considering revoking his carry permit or anything of that nature, given what you know so far about what happened?
So what we know so far, we don't have a reason to revoke his permit, Mark. You know, and these cases are specific. I'm thinking of a case a homicide case that we had within the last couple of months where a guy approached somebody who was breaking into a car, and that guy got shot and killed, right? So I don't want to mix this and say, hey, look, this should be the golden rule for every case. In this case, that person, by having that license, has gone through training. There are times when you can shoot, and there are times when you can't shoot. And it is clear, if it's in defense of your life or the life of someone else, you're able to do that. And there's no stipulation for things other than that, really. So this case will be examined through that lens to ultimately get to determine, you know, what happened. Again, we have to meticulously go through this case, get the information that we can, pull the video that we can, present this information to our partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office, give them an opportunity to say, hey, police, you need to go back, interview this person, get this, get that, and then transition this case to a grand jury for them to consider. Someone else who hasn't had a chance, right back here? Yeah,
Chief,
I'll take two more questions.
Chief,
yeah.
Can you shed any more light on the interaction, how this man described the interaction between him and Karon Blake? Were there any words exchanged, any light you can shed there?
I won't get into the interaction because that is going to come out in the grand jury. That will be described in grand jury, and that's part of the evidence, and I don't want to talk about that. Two other questions. We'll go to this. I don't think I had a question from you, sir.
No,
yes,
no, sir. Thanks, Chief. What did you say then to people in the neighborhood who question how an unarmed 13-year-old could threaten the life of an armed adult man?
I'll say we have to wait until the investigation is finalized before we know the answer to that.
You say a few questions here. How many times Karon was shot? Was he shot in the front or in the back? And do we know, was the legal gun owner's vehicle among those allegedly being broken into? Was that person looking into one of their vehicles or
So
no?
in terms of number of times shot, I will not address that. That's a grand jury issue. And regarding his vehicle, I'm not certain if one of his cars or his car was actually the car that was involved.
Shot in the front or the back, can you say?
I will not address that.
How many shots fired?
I will not address that either, Mark. All right. I think we covered just about everybody. All right. Thank everyone for coming out. This is a very important issue. Again, my heart goes out to this family, to all that are involved in this. Again, I want to make sure that as a community that we are all focused in on supporting this family. There's a 13-year-old in our community that is deceased. And while this young man is gone, there's still a need of kids just like Karon Blake and community who need our help. So let's do what we can as adults. Let's demonstrate what it means to really put our support around community and the young people of the District of Columbia. Thank you very much.
We now return to our previously scheduled program, already in progress.